Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers, and now, in June 1985, the Marvel series hits a landmark 100th issue. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler. As said, this is the special double-sized 100th issue of the Marvel series, simply entitled Star Wars here, that began all the way back with that adaptation of A New Hope. It's a story entitled First Strike, and it's kicking off the conflict with the Nagai in a really big way outside of Luke's first brief encounter with them on Kinnuine. You find this these days in the pages of Star Wars Omnibus A Long Time Ago, Volume 5. Now, this is, again, by Mary Jo Duffy and Cynthia Martin. And, again, I'm not a big fan of Cynthia Martin's artwork, but we just gotta kind of live with it here. It is essentially the beginning of a true conflict between the Alliance of Free Planets and the Nagai proper, rather than surrogates for them and so forth that we've seen. We start out with Han Solo having to take a flying test. Actually, Lando came up with this test as a way of kind of keeping himself busy, and now they're giving it to all the different pilots, and because of Han's flying style and Luke's with the Force, they actually both basically fail. So they're going to be grounded by the Alliance during peacetime, at least here. Oops. Now remember, based on what we saw in the last issue of the Marvel series, Bay and Finn Scheisse are there. Now, Bay, we don't know a whole lot about. We get more in here. Finn Scheisse back again, and now is in green rather than white armor like we saw back in Touch of the Goddess. And of course, there's Bay over there, the super tall dude off to the side with the sword. We wind up learning a little bit more about how Bay looked after Han when they were kids, with a brief flashback sequence here, very much like a brother to him, and when Bay winds up losing an eye, Han is there for him and such, so we get a little bit of that background before the real action gets going. With a fleet of Nagai ships on their way to the forest moon of Endor, rebel pilots led by Lando go up into space to try to stop them, but unfortunately Han and Luke don't get to go with them, because they haven't been cleared to fly thanks to the tests, thanks in an odd way to Lando, although Lando is definitely, regretting this. It's not something he's happy with or joking about or anything like that. Turns out, though, that as Luke and Han head out, they wind up running across Nagai already on the ground, led by Knife, right, back from Wookiee World and Duel with the Dark later, no Zeltrons and whatnot here, along with these sort of mechanical warriors from the Nagai called the Maccabees, I always have trouble saying it. It's M-A-C-C-A-B-R-E-E, Maccabees here. There are several other Nagai with him. It's essentially a landing force to take out the rebel base, and the idea is that there is a traitor among the Alliance who's been feeding information to them so that as the Nagai fleet is coming, that's keeping a lot of the rebels busy, or the Alliance personnel busy, so that this ground force that's gotten on to the forest moon of Endor thanks to that traitor is going to be able to attack the base. Meanwhile, though, we find that in space, a lot of the new maneuvers and such that the pilots have been being taught, those maneuvers are actually being fed to the enemy because of that spy. So Luke races off to get help to go back to the base. Han winds up being stuck by having to crash a speeder bike into one of the Maccabees, so he's essentially stranded there, so he has to kind of fight his way back, run his way back to the rebel base. Meanwhile, in space, there's all kinds of casualties in the fighting, and by the way, blink and you'll miss her, one of the pilots here is Lumaya, back with them after managing to escape from Luke and Danny and such back in the events of Escape, right, that part of that three-part arc with Duel with the Dark Lady and with no Zeltrons. And finally, we figure out who the traitor is whenever Han runs into him and is stopped from going back. The traitor is Bay, or at least it would appear to be so. Turns out that Bay is so big and freakish and has the white hair because he is half alien, half human, which is something that Han already knew. But the question is, what alien? He's half Corellian, half Nagai, and he is the half-brother of Knife. So when Knife, who's still gunning, or slicing, perhaps, for Han shows up, we wind up seeing essentially he's going to kill Han, Bay stops him, only for him to put a gun to Bay, Han blasts Knife, and there's just this whole kind of mess of Bay wanting to help Knife and save him, and it kind of leaves Bay with nowhere to go, or at least it seems like he has nowhere to go at this point. I'm kind of reminded of, Children of the Gods, the first Stargate SG-1 episode, I have nowhere to go. For this, you can stay at my place, come on! I can see Han being the one to say that here, but not so much in the circumstances. Meanwhile, in space, there's a better view of Lumaya there. In space, they realize that there is a traitor amongst them, so they're able to change tactics. On the ground, Luke is able to save Leia and the 4 Zeltron guys who've been still following her around since back in No Zeltrons. And the Maccabees launch their body portions here and zip off back into space to rejoin the Nagai fleet. So, no major casualties on the Alliance side, or really on the Nagai side, because Knife will be okay, but Bay is now out of the fold after just briefly appearing without really much of an origin story. That's next issue, and things are changing. The status quo has been upended because, as Luke says at the end, as far as being pilots, one of the Zeltrons says, "You and General Solo aren't pilots anymore." Luke says, "Sure we are. Are you talking about that little mistake the computers made? It doesn't matter. That was part of a peacetime order. As of right now, the Alliance of Free Planets is at war again." Dum, dum, dum! So ends the 100th issue. Big momentous event. They're at war. Though they kind of already were, to a degree. I mean, we saw the Nagai invasion fleet back in Duel with the Dark Lady. So, kind of interesting the way that they play this out, making that the big moment. Not all that great of a story for a double-sized issue. Doesn't seem to have much content to it for a double-sized issue. And again, it's Cynthia Martin's artwork that I'm not all that fond of. The battle sequences here don't work out nearly as well as they did back in Duel with the Dark Lady, but it pushes the story forward. There's a direct attack here, and now we know there was a traitor. It was apparently Bay. What's gonna happen next? That's what we're all wondering as the Nagai War, eventually the Nagai-Toph War, spills over and becomes the main focus of the rest of the Marvel series at this point, an active, ongoing war. All within, according to modern chronology estimates, within the first month after the events of Return of the Jedi. So, this story, First Strike, is this an essential read? Absolutely. If you're going to be following the Nagai War, this is where you really need to probably start following it if you didn't before, though, really, honestly, you probably should have back in the Lumaya 3-issue story arc recently. I would say it's definitely one to pick up if you are a Marvel reader. If you're a modern reader and you've been following the Marvel stuff this far and you want to see the post-Return of the Jedi stuff, you do also need to pick this one up because it's a necessary step in the evolution of that storyline. Not one of the most impactful steps, not one of the ones I'm like, yay, this was a great issue, but it does have enough of ripple effects into future issues that I think it is one you could definitely not skip over. It's got to be read, odd premise and kind of slow storytelling a little bit aside. We'll see more, and we'll see better in the Nagai storyline here coming up in future issues of the Marvel series. But with that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers.